Greetings, book lovers, and get ready for a literary adventure that will ignite your imagination. Join me as we traverse the captivating landscapes of Shift, Silo Saga, by Hugh Howey. Prologue. In 2007, the two key ingredients for mankind's downfall arrive. One of the ingredients is the software from the Center for Automation in Nanobiotech Con. The programs will be used to create cell-sized, self-propagating medical robot. Propranolol, a pill intended to erase traumatic memories, also arrives. In 2110, under the hills of Fulton County, Georgia, the main protagonist Troy, formerly known as Donald Keene, awakens after years of confinement in a room full of coffins. He panics, and men rush to hold him down. Troy longs to forget. He knows he will one day be forgotten as well. Chapter 1. It is the year 2049 in Washington, D.C. Freshman Congressman Donald Keene of Georgia, recently elected, hopes to bring change to Washington. He looks forward to meeting Senator Thurman, as do other recently elected freshman congressmen. Some of them find it amusing. The Centers for Disease Control have a manual for how to deal with a zombie invasion, but others find it merely precautionary, considering the behavior of a rabid doll. Keene's friend since college, Congressman Mick Webb, leaves Thurman's office as Keene is admitted. Thurman, who campaigned for Keene, stresses to Keene the importance of denial. Thurman wants Keene to be in on the new containment and disposal facility, FAC, in his energy plan, which is intended to house spent nuclear fuel. Conspiracy theorists believe it will house everything from aliens to advanced weapons. FAC needs an emergency underground shelter. Keene is stunned to discover the architectural plans for the shelter are his own from college, plans which made their way to the senator through his daughter. Keene is to update and expand the plans based on his study of architecture in college. Webb will be working on logistics, and Keene will need to collaborate with him. The senator's daughter, Anna, will be the lead engineer on the project. Chapter 2. It is the year 2210 in Silo 1. Troy's awakening continues to be monitored by a doctor. The doctor prescribes a pill to be taken twice daily with a meal of foul-tasting paste. The doctor explains that his shift will be over by the time Troy comes back in 6 months for a follow-up. Troy's older memories seem to be slipping away. Troy feels out of it. He runs into an older man who explains he himself is on his second shift and recognizes Troy as being on his first shift. Troy heads off to be alone so no one can see him cry. Chapter 3. It is 2049 in Washington, D.C. Keene returns to his office. His secretary, Margaret, reveals that Keenan has a visitor. It is Anna Thurman. She has installed a new monitor for him under the assumption he would agree to help her father. She herself will be handling mechanical spaces on the plans. Keene and Anna had a thing years ago. He is nervous to see her now, especially because he is married. They agree to plan out when they can meet to work on the project. Chapter 4. It is 2210 in Silo 1. Troy is late to work. He will be taking the place of Merriman, who is ending his shift. Merriman cautions Troy to keep an eye on the workers, but to only use the deep freeze if workers can't handle things. Troy's job is to make sure nothing goes wrong. Jones is suggested for any mechanical difficulties. Merriman urges Troy to follow the script, to be in contact with other silos as little as possible, that second and third generation survivors are now common and that there are forbidden words and phrases. He suggests meeting with Victor and explains that there is more fracturing than anticipated in some of the other silos. Chapter 5. It is 2049 in Washington, D.C. Weeks pass. Keen's schedule becomes busy, and he isn't able to spend as much time with his wife, Helen. Helen worries about the legality of the project that Keen is working on, but he assures her there is nothing to worry about. Helen does not like the fact that Anna and Keen are working together. Keen assures her she has nothing to worry about. Mick Weber swings by for a visit and to invite Keen out for a drink. Thurman calls, tells the young men to have a good time, reminds Keen to make sure Mick keep his mouth shut, and sets up a meeting for Monday. Chapter 6. It is 2110 in Silo 1. Troy goes to get food. Everything served is canned. As he sits down to eat, he thinks about how there seems to be something he should remember, but keeps forgetting. An elderly man named Hal speaks to Troy. Hal reminds Troy of someone, but he can't place it. Hal remarks how people who avoid watching the sunset are people trying to forget something, while those who watch are trying to remember. Hal comments on how bad memories seem to slip away, while the unimportant things can be remembered clearly. Chapter 7. It is 2049 in Washington, D.C. Keen meets with Thurman in Kramer's bookshop. Thurman has heard that Keen's sister, Charlotte, has been redeployed. Keen explains his sister just couldn't relax or readjust to civilian life. Keen also explains his sister tried memory loss pills, but they made her too forgetful and gave her tremors. Thurman agrees to talk with Charlotte, who serves as a drone operator. Thurman explains that Keen and Webb are to go to Georgia to oversee how the excavation for the silos is coming along. The outer walls will be poured soon. Keen is also to meet with Charles Rhodes, governor of Oklahoma, who is handling supplies for the project. Rhodes served with Thurman in the armed forces years before. Thurman compliments Keen on all the good work he has done. Chapter 8. It is 2110 in Silo 1. Troy, as head of Operation 50, goes over the Book of the Order. The Book of the Order is intended as an operations manual, but seems more like a guide to human nature. Some parts are vague, making Troy wonder if they serve a deeper purpose. Troy himself wonders what his purpose is, considering he had originally studied for a different job, but was just promoted. He considers asking Victor over in psychological services, since the psychologists are responsible for the plan that makes people feel so empty inside. There are no days off, 6 months solid of work, and decades of sleep between shifts. A radio tech named Saul helps orient Troy to his work as a radio tech. Troy is to field calls from candidates and run through set questions. Troy takes a call from Marcus Dent, who explains he is Shadow Deputy Willis, transferred to its security, and has been studying the order for 6 weeks. He says his purpose is to uphold the order and protect life and legacy above all. Marcus is set to be married to a girl named Melanie. Troy welcomes Marcus to Operation 50. Marcus asks if everything in the legacy is true. Troy explains that everything in the legacy is true, but doesn't say that not everything that is true is included in the legacy. Troy marvels silently at how Silo 1 has been charged with humanity's survival. Chapter 9. It is 2049 in Fulton County, Georgia. Excavation work is well underway. Keen and Webb oversee the work. The project is facing many delays and is 2 months behind due to the fact that so many international partners are involved. Keen says the job probably should have been left to the private sector, which causes Webb to make fun of Keen, telling Keen he sounds like a Republican. Webb contends the project is about the death of coal and energy independence. Meeting with Rhodes, Webb and Keen learn that Thurman wrote the bill that regulated cryogenic freezing, killing the fad for it. Keen decides to go home and see his wife. Chapter 10. It is 2110 in Silo 1. Troy does his best to suppress his emotions with the drugs given out, but has little success. He finds himself crying frequently. He is jealous of the people in the other silos who did not know the world before the silos, and so are allowed to live their whole lives unhindered. Randall brings reports to Troy which detail beliefs, the need for a formal induction for the head of Silo 6, and troubling population report on Silo 32 in which their population is fast approaching maximum while the head of 32, Biggers, denies this. It means Biggers has either been deliberately lying and is complicit or has lost control. Troy agrees that Biggers must be replaced. Word then comes from Saul that Silo 12 is collapsing. Chapter 11. It is 2049 in Savannah, Georgia. Helen is thrilled to be out to dinner with her husband. She is proud of Keen, but worries about his working so closely with Anna. Keen reassures her that she has nothing to worry about. Chapter 12. It is 2110 in Silo 1. Troy and dozens of others rush to the control room where they listen to audio and watch video feeds from 12, all of which are chaotic. They can hear people shouting about others trying to break through. Troy attempts to guide the sheriff's surviving deputy through the situation, telling him to obtain all keys and wait in the holding cell. Troy knows whatever is going on in Silo. Troy knows whatever is going on in Silo 12 must be contained to Silo 12. The mob that has rebelled is seeking to break out of the silo. Troy orders gas canisters fired just as the people break out, causing them to scramble, cough, and collapse. Any remaining people in Silo 12 apart from staff are to be put down. The staff is to be debriefed. Chapter 13. It is 2049 in Wright Hospital, Duane Medical Center, where Thurman is in a chamber receiving nano treatment which rejuvenates Thurman's body, thus greatly expanding his lifespan. He explains that terrorists and people like the Iranians are attempting to hijack nanotechnology for use as a weapon. Thurman says there will be a cataclysmic event sooner or later, and that he wants Keen and his wife to have a place in the world after. He gives Keen a copy of the order and instructs Keen to memorize it. He will have a few years to do it. Thurman also tells Keen to pencil in the National Convention and says that some of the nanocells in the chamber are for him. This unnerves Keen, even though Thurman appears to be joking. Chapter 14. It is 2110 in Silo 1. Troy goes through the Silo 12 reports alone, so no one can see him cry. Decent people had put the wrong person into power in Silo 12. The head of Silo 12 could sense danger, but would not kill to save the others. Her shadow, an it-tech named Jason, was clearly too young for the job, having had doubts sown in his mind by the rebellion. Victor delivers Troy's daily dose of pills, but he spits them out when Victor leaves. Troy desires to remember the past. Chapter 15. It is 2049 in Savannah, Georgia. Keen is worried after having read through enough of the order to realize there is danger in what is going on. He reveals his meeting with Thurman and the order book to Helen. He says he fears that nano. Cells are going to be weaponized and used not to heal people, but tear them apart. Helen says they will get through everything, but Donald wonders about everyone else. Chapter 16. It is 2110 in Silo 1. Troy continues to spit out his pills. He constantly worries if he has been seen. Chapter 17. It is 2050, 1 in Washington, D.C. Helen continues to worry about her husband working with Anna. He reassures her that most of their work is done electronically. Mick Webb is late for a meeting. The medical board has determined there should be one central stairwell in the emergency silo and that there will be no emergency lift in order to keep things open. Anna explains the COD. Fast project will be her father's legacy. She comments on how everyone thinks they will live longer and longer, but that no one ever stops to question just how much time they actually have left. Keen learns that Mick has gone to a movie and sounds high. He tells Mick that some things are better left in the past. Chapter 18. It is 21:10 in Silo 1. Troy receives word of a worker not responding to treatment. Deep freeze is recommended. Troy is needed to sign the waiver. He heads down to see Dr. Henson. In the doctor's office, Hal has been constrained to a gurney, watched over by 2 security guards. Hal is shouting that his name is Carlton. He is given a sedative and prepared for cryogenic sleep. Troy helps bring Hal into the freezing chamber, where each cold bed has a name for the occupant. Some are empty, some are not. Among the names are 2 Helens and an Helena. This catches Troy's attention and causes him to shudder and fall. He realizes his name isn't Troy, but he also knows his name isn't Donnie either. Chapter 19. It is 2052 in Fulton County, Georgia. The Democratic National Convention is coming to southwest Georgia, resembling a state fair during its setup. During the event, Mick Webb brings Keen to see the emergency silo. Keen is impressed, but notes that not everything has been built exactly according to plan. Mick tells Keen that Keen has always been like a brother to him. Mick reveals that Thurman has offered him a spot on a top team, the first group, but has insisted the job be offered to Keen instead. He tells Keen that everything happens for a reason. Keen doesn't quite know how to respond. Chapter 20. It is 21:10 in Silo 1. Troy wakes up. He feels sick. He heads into a familiar room in the silo complex because there is something he needs to see. Chapter 21. It is 2052 in the hills above Silo 1. The Democratic National Convention is getting underway and will take place in and above the cod. Fact itself. Turnout is tremendous. Senator Thurman tells Keen the world will change that day, and that he wants Keen and Helen near the Georgia delegation stage when the 141st flies overhead and a special visitor arrives. Chapter 22. It is 21:10 in Silo 1. Troy walks among the cryopod cold beds. His memories come rushing back, wherein he is being strapped to a gurney and screaming. Troy remembers an accident, a controlled explosion, a fake catastrophe, and crowds of panicked people sobbing and shouting. Troy stops in front of Helen's cryopod and remembers the woman inside wasn't his wife, but wanted to be. The doctor and security arrived. Troy knows he will be put to sleep for good. Troy challenges the doctor, who admits that some of the staff remember the past because they know it was a good thing that they did. As Troy is put down, he realizes he isn't merely being put to sleep, but killed. His last thoughts are of his wife, who is in Tennessee. Chapter 23. It is 2052 above Silo 1. Keen and Anna meet up by the Georgia stage. The special guest arrives. It is Charlotte, Keen's sister. Keen receives a text message from Helen saying she is in Tennessee. He can't understand why she is there after all of his text messages to her told her to meet him in Georgia. As he heads to the Tennessee stage, Anna tries to get him to stay. He can hear a teenage girl preparing to introduce Thurman, speaking of how there can never be too great a price to pay for liberty. An air squadron flies overhead at the end of the national anthem. Suddenly, flashes of light can be seen. Air raid sirens go off. Keen realizes it is a nuclear attack. The taste of metal is in the air. Anna and Charlotte grab hold of Keen and take him to a small tent where the senator is directing certain people. They head down a concrete ramp beneath the tent. Keen is panicked because Helen is not with him. He knows the world has changed forever. Chapter 24. Troy awakens. He knows he should be dead, but he is not. The doctors who woke him are different than the ones who put him to sleep. They say they need his help with Silo 18. Troy then recognizes another man in the room. It is Senator Thurman. Second shift. Order. Chapter 25. It is the year of the Great Uprising in Silo 18. 17-year-old Mission Jones and his buddy Cam are on a tandem delivery up hundreds of flights of stairs. The graffiti on the wall says, "The end is coming." Mission believes it is. His family has long worked the same plot of farmland in the silo. No one bothers to do maintenance jobs anymore, such as chipping, banging out raw spots of rust and painting them over. Mission picks up side work as a porter. Mission's grandfather was killed in the uprising of 78. Rodney, Mission's best friend, once spoke of a revolution seriously. He hasn't been seen in months, supposedly shadowing someone on the 34th floor. Chapter 26. Mission and Com deliver their load, a body, to the coroner's office on the farm's lower level. Mission swings by the maintenance room to see if Winters needs anything carried up so his father won't lecture him for wasting time. Winters produces a massive water pump that needs to be carried up. Mission agrees. At the farm security gate, he sees Frankie, a childhood friend now working security. Frankie reveals that people on other levels have begun growing food, that the mayor has been letting things slide lately. Frankie asks if Mission will see the crow anytime soon. Mission says he will, so Frankie asks Mission to say hello for him. Chapter 27. Mission says hello to his father and younger half-brother Riley. The corn is coming in well. Riley is thrilled to see Mission. Their father dislikes that other levels are producing their own food now, since it means less work for porters to move between levels. His father also worries about Mission's health, especially Mission's knees. Portering takes a toll on porters. His father asks if Mission has been by to see Ally, Mission's first and shortest romance, saying that all the boys want to marry her, but she'll only have Mission. Mission says he won't have time to see her. He secretly knows that marrying Ally would mean returning to farming, and he does not want that. He also secretly knows that the move to independence by each of the levels of people means that there is a chance of violence. No one wants to have to depend on others if it can be avoided. Chapter 28. Mission goes to see Janine in sanitation. Janine is the girl that Mission truly wants to be with. Janine works testing water. She is thrilled to see him and asks if he has been by the nest lately. Mission says he will be by there soon. She will be hanging out with friends dropping paint bombs that evening. He tells her to be careful. She tells him to watch his step and kisses him on the cheek. Chapter 29. Mission and a gang of porter friends attempt to lift a massive generator through the levels, but the ropes break and a fight breaks out above. Chapter 30. It is second shift in Silo 1. After 70 years asleep, Donald Keene is rolled out of the cryopod chamber in a wheelchair. It takes a day for his mind to clear up. Thurman comes to see Keene in his room. He says they need Keene to remember everything. Keene's old report has been left for Keene to read when his mind sufficiently clears. Small pieces of the past come back to Keene, such as what happened to Silo 12. Chapter 31. Dr. Henson comes to check up on Keene, bringing food and medicine. Thurman comes to Keene's apartment. Keene remembers everything now. Thurman says they did what had to be done. Keene says there is no justifying what they did. Thurman argues that everyone was going to die anyways, that everyone was already infected, and that it was only a matter of time before the nano infection was activated. Thurman explains that they are losing other silos and need to know why. Because Keen was resistant to the meds, he has been temporarily awakened to find out. It is revealed the medication is not in the pills, but in the water. Some, like Thurman, are immune. Keen shouldn't be. Thurman wants to know why. He explains that someone believes he can help, and Keen will see her in the morning. Chapter 32. Keen studies the report for answers, from the age of its shadows to inductees asking questions about the order. Thurman brings Keen through the armory where Anna awaits them in a conference room. Keen is stunned to see her because no female is supposed to be awake during the era of shifts. She has been living there secretly for a year. Anna reveals that at least 11 silos have been lost, and that it all began about a year ago with Cell 40. She reveals that it was Thurman's boss, Victor, who wanted Keen woken up. Victor was the one who wrote the order and created the entire operation. Anna reveals that Victor committed suicide 2 days before. Chapter 33. Anna reveals that Victor was obsessed with the first silo that was lost, and that he blamed himself for what happened. Keen considers that maybe Victor had a sudden bout of sanity, realized the entire program was wrong, and so killed himself. Anna insists this is not true, that they did what had to be done. Still, Keen agrees to help solve the problem to avoid more bloodshed or loss of life. Chapter 34. In Silo 18, Mission leaves the fight that has broken out between porters and farmers over the generator. He heads to the crow's nest, which serves as a nursery, day school, and classrooms that serve the up-to-po. The teacher in charge of all operations is the elderly and wise Mrs. Crow. She asks that Mission pass on a letter to Rodney through Jeffrey, another old student who now works in security. Mrs. Crow reflects sadly on remembering how things were better once. Mission asks Mrs. Crow to tell him about the old world. Chapter 35. Mission wonders what the world outside is like. He heads to it, where a group of young people with computers are waiting for entry. Mission learns from it, security, that a power spike took out a large number of computers. There is some kind of fire down in mechanical and violence up in the farms, as well as it looking to hire new techs. Mission agrees to accompany Jeffrey when Jeffrey brings Rhodey lunch to deliver the letter. Mission discovers a fellow porter, Bradley, applying for an IT position. While waiting for Jeffrey, Mission secretly reads the letter, which includes 2 lines from an old nursery rhyme. Soon, 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 the mama bird sings. Take flight. Mission is admitted to see Roddy. Mission is admitted to see Rodney, who is training in repairs. Roddy secretly passes Mission a note with a handshake as Mission leaves. Chapter 36. Mr. Wick, head of it, requests service as Mission begins to leave it. Wick reveals he went to school with Mission's parents years before. He wants Mission to do a secret job for 200 chits, a package delivered from Joyce in supply. Mission says he'll think about it. As he leaves, he looks at Rhodey's note. It says, "Help me." Chapter 37. Keen wants desperately to find his wife, figuring she is in Silo 2 along with 4,000 other people. He runs a search for Helen among the Silo's records and finds 3. He then runs a search for Karma and finds 1 result. He looks at the records for Karma and her photos. He confirms that she is indeed his wife and that she has remarried a man named Rick Brewer, whose photo reveals him to be Mick Webb. They have grandchildren now. Keen realizes he is 100 years too late. Anna does her best to comfort him as he cries. Chapter 38. Keen goes to Victor's funeral, attended by only 4 people: Thurman, Anna, Erskine, and himself. Keen realizes he is only alive because of having dated Anna briefly in college. Keen finds it hard to mourn the death of a man who has killed billions. Erskine reveals he and Victor worked together in the before. Erskine is the one who discovered the nano threat while working on nano medical robots to heal wounded soldiers. Chapter 39. Erskine confirms that enemy nanobots in the blood of people were crude but lethal and would have taken most out. Erskine explains he argued for countermeasures while Victor argued for CAD. Erskine's own daughter, Caroline, is still in cryosleep. Erskine explains that all the meetings occurring with Thurman in the nanochamber were not just about prolonging life, but healing the infected. But it was Victor who pointed out that one successive wave of nano bugs after another could be created, just like computer viruses. Natural disasters bring people together, but terrorist attacks shatter unity. Erskine explains that a terrorist attack consisting of nanotechnology that could replicate itself and act without need for a human agent would cause chaos. 500 years underground could cleanse the world above. Erskine reveals that Victor was glad knowing good people like Keen were around, and wishes the world was full of people who did the right thing. Chapter 40. Anna comforts Keen that night. Chapter 41. Mission wants to help Rodney, but does not know how. He remembers how his own mother had been taken away years before after giving birth to him. Drexel has Mission bring medicines for Below to Dispatch. In Dispatch, he learns that Calm is headed to Supply, having just come from it. Mission races out to beat Calm to Supply. Chapter 42. Mission races to Supply to learn that Calm has already beaten him, and I headed down 6 flights to an apartment. Mission races after him and discovers a landing on the staircase falling away, sending people tumbling into space, falling away, sending people tumbling into space. Mission wonders if the entire silo stands to collapse. People above and below are panicked. A fire hose is sent down. A woman screams and points to Mission, saying the porter did it. Chapter 43. A mob chases Mission, who flees downward, avoiding wreckage. There is much smoke, and it is rising up. Chapter 44. Keen is still depressed from everything he has learned. A year before, Silo 40 had hacked into the communication systems. It was assumed that the hack was accomplished by a rogue it had. Termination was enacted, but there was no way to verify. Thurman, Erskine, and Victor were all awakened according to emergency protocol. Anna was awakened to use a radio to activate the collapse mechanisms in other rebellious silos, causing them to self-destruct. In the present, Keen pores over Victor's comments on the report on Silo 18. The comments include "this is why" and an end to them all. Keen wonders if these comments are suicidal or point to something else. Keen also wonders if he might end up dead if he follows Victor's trail too closely. Chapter 45. Keen takes breaks by walking through the armory. He finds an old hallway with rooms and bathrooms where people appear to have once stayed. He also finds a control room for the drones kept in the armory. This makes him think of Charlotte. Chapter 46. Thurman and Dr. Henson agree to allow Keen the chance to see Charlotte, though Charlotte will not be awakened. Keen explains his sister was taking propranolol to deal with her work, but stopped using it due to all the side effects, such as not tasting food. Keen himself began taking them after reading the order for a few years, up until the day of going underground. Thurman comes to believe that Victor was not interested in the report that Keen wrote, but in Keen himself. Chapter 47. Thurman explains that they have been considering resetting Silo 18, wiping it clean, and starting over again as Victor suggested. Thurman explains the cafeteria video screens showing the outside world are to remind people inside of the dangers of escape. While reviewing the reports over lunch with Anna and Thurman, Keen realizes why Silo 18 cannot be reached or reset. Someone in 18 remembers, or is immune like Keen. Victor wanted to find that one person who remembered. Keen believes they can still find that person. If they do, they might be able to save the other people still living inside. Chapter 48. The smoke gets thicker as Mission heads lower. He believes that the package Com unknowingly carried was some sort of explosive. Mission heads to lower dispatch, which is in chaos. Morgan, Mission's boss, directs him to help the evacuation of records from the offices. A porter named Amanda explains they came for the crops they were growing and burned everything. The porters rally together and determine what to do next. They believe farmers are responsible. Joel says they must strike back or they'll appear weak. Mission thinks something else is going on. He explains that Ronnie is in trouble and Com is probably dead. Morgan advises caution in moving forward. Mission says he needs to get up top. Chapter 49. Mission reaches out to friends he knows he can trust, including Lynn and Joel. He will pay them every bit of money he has, 384 chits, if they will do a tandem for him. Chapter 50. Mission pretends to be a corpse that Lynn and Joel must carry up so he can avoid the people who think he is responsible for what is going on. He thinks about his weight needing to be carried, and he feels like a burden. This causes him to cry because he thinks of his mother carrying him for 9 months and then dying. Chapter 51. Keen searches through the Silo 18 database of 10,000 people with parameters similar to his own and finds who he is looking for. Thurman and Anna congratulate him. Keen insists on being allowed to listen in on the call that is made to Silo 18. Thurman agrees. Wyke, the head of 18, is brought online, but it is Wick's shadow who says he knows who Thurman is after. The shadow is then initiated to become Wick's successor, and it is given the truth about the silos and the world above. The shadow is Rodney. Chapter 52. Keen and Anna organize the war room beyond the armory in case a future shift might need it. They, along with Thurman and others awakened in the emergency, are preparing to return to sleep. Anna returns first, but Keen isn't thrilled about it. He puts on an old military suit, helmet, gloves, and boots, activates a lift, and begins moving up from the armory. Chapter 53. Keen is elevated to a launch bay for drones, which he quickly climbs up. He comes to stand on a concrete platform in the world above. He begins to remove his gloves, feeling grit in the wind, then feels a hand on his shoulder. Chapter 54. Thurman looms above Keen with no protective gear on. He tells Keen it is time to go. Keen is grabbed by several security agents who drag him back into the silo. There, a needle is plunged into Keen's arm, and he loses consciousness as his thoughts are on Victor saying the world would be better if someone like Keenan was in charge. Chapter 55. Above supply, Mission is let out of the bag in a restroom for a break and some water. Returning to the bag, he falls asleep. In Central Dispatch, he is let out again. Hundreds of bullet holes are in the walls. The place has been wrecked. Dozens of porters and workers are dead. The power flashes. Mission decides to go on to the level 30s. Chapter 56. The power is out by the time Mission continues. An explosion in mechanical is said to be the cause. More and more people are crowding the stairwell as he nears it. No one knows what is going on. He makes his way past the farms to Mrs. Crow's school, where Frankie and Allie are arranging desks while Mrs. Crow is singing. Mission, explains Rodney's note for help. But Mrs. Crow says Rodney is not in any danger. Mission insists. Rodney is afraid. Mrs. Crow says that she has judged Rodney wrongly. Chapter 57. A curfew has been announced. Far below, the sounds of a mob can be heard. Ally confesses to Mission that there has been an attack on the farms and Riley has been killed. Mission is devastated, believing he should have been there. The sounds of the mob get closer. Mission realizes the mob is actually security. Rodney is in the lead. He demands Mrs. Crow tell everyone what she does. Rodney says he has learned the truth about the world. Rodney says it is Mrs. Crow's fault that they are all angry. She says they should be after what has been done to the world. Rodney counters that Mrs. Crow's talk of a better world makes them hate their current world. Rodney says the crow must die and that the slate must be wiped clean. He goes to shoot her, but Mission jumps in the way and takes the bullet in the stomach. Rodney then shoots the crow. He is attacked by Frankie. Frankie is apprehended. Chapter 58. It is years later. Mission has survived his wound. He has married Ally and gone back to farming. Allie announces she is pregnant. If it is a boy, Mission wants to name the baby Cam, though he can't understand where the name has come from. Chapter 59. It is decades later in Silo 1. Keen is once again awakened. The orderlies refer to him as Thurman, saying another silo has been lost and that they have lost contact with Silo 18. Keen realizes that he has no idea who the orderlies are. Furthermore, they have no idea about who he is. Chapter 60. It is hour 1 in Silo 17. 16. Year-old Jimmy Parker and his friends and classmates always receive special lessons in civics the day before a cleaning in which someone will die. Cleanings are days off from school, while unrest and the louds are silenced. Mrs. Pearson, the teacher, talks about the importance of the pact, in which a person must choose a life partner. This earns Jimmy a smile from Sarah Jenkins. After school is up for the day, Jimmy learns they are all in trouble as he hears banging far below. Chapter 61. Sounds of chaos rise from below. The staircase shakes. Jimmy and his mother head down while most people are rushing up. Jimmy and his mother are looking for his father. His mother gets carried back in the rush. She shouts at Jimmy to find his father. Jimmy heads into it. Chapter 62. A family friend, Yanni, is standing guard at it. He grabs Jimmy, saying his father won't let anyone in. Jimmy's father then shoots Yanni. Jimmy rushes to his father's side. They move through a door into the communications hub. Jimmy's father gives him a key on a black cord, the key to the silo. It is only one of two in existence. They then move through a secret passageway. Jimmy's father explains there has been a breach, that they are trying to shut down the silo, and that they have opened the airlocks. Jimmy's father brings him to a hidden escape apartment to stay until he can come back with his wife. They will communicate by wireless radio. Jimmy's father tells him not to open the door for anyone but him or his mother. A new code is enacted for movement through the silo. Chapter 63. In Silo 1, Keen comes into a third shift. Keen struggles to focus as he continues to fully awaken. He has been tested by Dr. Wilson. Keen is amazed by all the power he has been afforded as people think he is Thurman. He is taken to the communications room by Aaron, operations head. Keen realizes something has gone wrong with the shifts. He learns a cleaner has headed towards Silo 17, shut down 2 shifts ago. The cleaner has not come back. Permission is needed to send someone after her. Keen calls for files on the cleaner and says she won't get far. Chapter 64. Keen goes to the central offices, to psychological services. Aaron explains it has been 30, some years since 17 was lost. The day it was lost, a shadow tech was on the line with Silo 1. Aaron explains that if the cleaner makes it to the location of 17, all she will find is a hole in the ground. Keen directs Aaron to contact the silos surrounding 17 to let them know to be on the lookout for the cleaner in case she changes direction. Keen feels as if he has been elected to Congress for the first time all over again, with the weight of responsibility coming down upon him. Chapter 65. Keen knows someone has tampered with the shifts and the names. He wonders about telling the truth. Keen longs into Thurman's computer account and reads through old messages. One is a message from Victor questioning whether their world, or they themselves, were worth saving to begin with. Victor writes that while the world was worth saving, humanity was not. Keen also discovers what appears to be an old message from Anna to her father, asking him to wake her when he got the message. A locket number 20,390,190,1102 is included in the message. Aaron brings in the files on 17 and the cleaner. He says the head of 18, Bernard, is blaming himself for what has happened. Bernard is also in need of a new shadow, Aaron reveals. He then points out Gable across the hall, a good guy who couldn't cut it, so he took the option of his memory being wiped rather than being put into deep freeze. Chapter 66. It is day 1 in Silo 17. Jimmy waits for word from his father through the radio. He also watches events in Silo 17 using video monitoring. Looking around the apartment, he finds a book called The Order. A voice comes in over the radio. Jimmy answers, but it is Deputy Mitch Hines looking for Jimmy's father. Jimmy then hears his father telling Mitch the traffic has to be stopped. His father says there is a breach up top and Mitch is now acting sheriff until the end. Jimmy's father, Russ, tells Jimmy to remain where he is. Chapter 67. Jimmy anxiously awaits the return of his father. Suddenly, men from security appear on video screen with Russ as a prisoner. They demand Jimmy to give them the new passcode. Russ tells Jimmy not to give it up, and he is shot and killed. The security men then drag Jimmy's mother into view. Chapter 68. Jimmy is beside himself with panic and begins crying. He rushes to the door to enter the passcode, but it doesn't work. The men become angry and kill his mother. Jimmy falls to the floor, horrified. Chapter 69. A plastic bag with the word shift is awaiting Keen when he returns to the apartment. It contains some of Thurman's personal effects. Keen knows that someone has put him into his current position, but who or why is unknown. Keen considers that he has been put into this position to ask questions and get to the truth. Keen also considers that when the shifts end, nothing is going to come out well. Chapter 70. It is now week 1 in Silo 17. Days have passed since the uprising. Men are periodically trying to break down the door to get to the secret apartment where Jimmy continues to hide. Jimmy goes on the radio and speaks with a man from level 40. Jimmy overhears the man talking to someone else and the words "we were too late" being said. Jimmy continues to try to raise someone. He finally hears someone asking for his dad. The person is saying that the silo is being shut down. He also overhears someone complaining about this happening on their shift. Chapter 71. Jimmy explores the apartment. There is enough food for two people for 10 years inside. He also discovers a wall of drawings labeled silos. Chapter 72. The men who keep trying to break into the apartment talk about death and the outside world. On the radio, levels are dividing up to defend themselves or attack others. Jimmy looks the order. The book is full of horrible things that can possibly happen, how to prevent them, and how to stop disasters. He begins going through the books in the apartment's small library. He begins to look up things in the encyclopedia, such as locomotives and locusts. Chapter 73. Keen confers on replacing the head of Silo 18 with a recommended man named Kyle. He also learns attempts to regain control of Silo 18 are underway, but a barricade of sorts has stopped the progress temporarily. Chapter 74. Keen wonders about the outside world. He knows that cleaners have supposedly been killed in the outside world, but knows that he himself has not died or fallen ill. Keen goes through the file on Silo 17. There is no mention of anything out of the ordinary before the collapse, but everyone blamed everyone else for it. A mass exodus for the exit to the silo had been followed by a blackout in communications to 17. A boy had gotten onto the radio, inquiring about level 40. Keen then realizes it was not level 40, but Silo 40 that the boy had contacted. Keen wonders if Silo 40 is still alive and functioning, and that it has established contact with other silos such as 17. There is a possibility that 17 is not lost. Chapter 75. Keen reveals his theory to Aaron. Chapter 76. It is now year 2 in Silo 17. Jimmy continues to live in the apartment and to watch power shift in the silo as groups of people struggle to gain control or protect themselves. Chapter 77. Jimmy teaches himself how to use and load the guns in the apartment. He knows it is only a matter of time until the people figure out the right code to the door and break in. Chapter 78. At long last, the right code to the door is entered. Jimmy shoots 2 of the 3 men who appear, while the third runs off. Chapter 79. Keen meets with Dr. Wilson to oversee the awakening of a tech for his shift. Keen learns the process by heart for awakening someone. Wilson explains that when someone is awakened, their personal possessions are retrieved from their storage locker. Keen then realizes that Anna's message had a typo in it. The locket was actually referring to a locker. Chapter 80. Keen goes to the lockers in the storage levels of the silo. He opens his locker and finds a bag with the word legacy on it. Inside are Keen's old clothes, wedding ring, and cell phone. As he thinks about the past, he comes to hate Mick Webb for stealing his wife and living the life that Keen never got to live. He is also enraged with Anna, who got him involved in the first place. Chapter 81. Keen finds the 2 other lockers he needs. He then goes and wakes up Anna. He asks her why he brought him into everything. She says she and Keen were never meant to be awakened. She tells him they need to get out, that it isn't safe. Keen gives her what she believes to be the mixture needed to help stabilize a person waking up. In reality, it is poison. Anna dies within seconds. Chapter 82. It is year 7 in Silo 17. With his food supply going bad and water running short, Jimmy realizes it is time to venture out of the apartment. Chapter 83. Jimmy leaves the apartment. At first, he is terrified about leaving. He checks his passcode to make sure that it still works. He comes across the skeleton of one of the men he had killed years before. He moves on. Chapter 84. Jimmy carefully ascends the levels. He comes across a general store where the skeletons of the dead remain. Jimmy remembers the past sadly as he continues on. Chapter 85. There is an eerie silence as Jimmy continues on his journey outside of the safe room. He writes words on a chalkboard in his old classroom which say that ghosts are watching. He writes that he is Jimmy, just because he wants to leave his mark and be remembered. Jimmy realizes how utterly alone he is. He renames himself Solo. Chapter 86. Keen is not happy about taking Anna's life. A folder is delivered to Keen by Dr. Wilson in which a single old sheet of paper is found. It is titled the Pact. It contains information agreed to by all parties involved that come to the end of the project. Only one silo will be released back into the world. Silo 1 is not meant to be released. The women and children in Silo 1 are being kept asleep. This is not to keep order, but to keep everyone working until the end of the shifts when they will all be killed. Chapter 87. It is now year 12 in Silo 17. Jimmy Solo Parker explores and scavenges the silo level by level each year, coming at last to supply. The place has been ransacked. He thinks someone else is living in supply, and he runs out. Chapter 88. Solo tries to figure out whether his mind is playing tricks on him or if someone else is truly still alive. He then hears someone crying. Chapter 89. The crying sounds like that of a baby. Solo cautiously seeks out the source of the crying. He ends up on the apartment level, in a community kitchen. He sees a cat. Chapter 90. Solo tries to figure out if the cat is wild or someone's pet. He feeds the cat and takes it along with him. He is no longer Solo, but Jimmy again. Chapter 91. Keen continues pouring through old records. Among the hopeful silos for release, Silo 6 is listed at the top. Silos 12, 17, and 40 are unknowns. Silo 18 and 40 are unknowns. Silo 18 is near the bottom of the list. As he reads, he realizes Anna must have previously stumbled onto something. He is coughing much lately, evidence of illness. He is summoned by Aaron about the shadow in Silo 18. Chapter 92. Keen learns from Aaron that he was previously not in a psychologist role, but in a communications role. It makes Keen realize that Silo 1 will fall apart in the future. Chapter 93. The communications hall establishes contact with the shadow in Silo 18. His name is Lucas Kyle. Keen runs through procedural questions to check whether or not Lucas Kyle will be a good silo head. Kyle asks how everything all began, because he thinks context would give him a better sense of purpose. Chapter 94. It is now year 16 in Silo 17. The cat has become Jimmy's pet companion and has been named Shadow. While exploring, Jimmy comes across a massive door that has been tied shut. Dozens of dead bodies are inside. Chapter 95. One night, while asleep, Jimmy is attacked by a man with a long, white beard. Jimmy shoots and kills the man. He realizes the power has gone out and that the man's appearance was not an accident. Jimmy investigates carefully around his apartment, then out into the hall, where he finds another person. He shoots and kills the person, discovering it to be a woman with a large belly. Chapter 96. With the power and door undone, Jimmy is restless. Knowing his safety is compromised, Jimmy goes fishing in an indoor water cistern where someone had released fish years before. He catches and prepares the fish as highlighted in the old books in the apartment. He realizes the fish will not last forever. Chapter 97. Keen secretly goes down to cryosleep to awaken his sister Charlotte. When she asks where she is, Keen explains she is with him. Chapter 98. Keen brings Charlotte to the war room beyond the armory, telling her to stay there until he comes back. Keene reports progress in 18 to Aaron, saying that it is believed the fighting will be over in a day or two. Chapter 99. Keene returns to Charlotte with food. The two discuss their situation and how some people leave the silos and go over the hill, never to return again. Keene wants to know what is over the hill. He has Charlotte pilot an old drone to find out. The drone is old and gives out easily, but not before blue skies and green grass can be seen. Chapter 100. It is year 20 in Silo 17. Jimmy watches how things deteriorate and break down from the silo to human bodies. Jimmy realizes the bodies previously found were between the inner and outer doors, between the silo and the world outside. To pass the time, Jimmy creates little parachutes weighted down by washers and sends them down the center of the silo. Chapter 101. As the years go on, Jimmy collects all the things he needs, such as a machete. This helps him to hack through the greenery in the farmlands. His crops are coming in well. Chapter 102. Keene goes to the cryosleep vault where he awakens Thurman, who is sleeping in Keene's old cryo bed. Thurman asks what year it is. Keene says it is 200 years before Thurman kills them all. Thurman says it is the only way to let one silo go free and destroy all the others. This must be done to kill all deadly knowledge from the world before, such as nanotechnology and nuclear weapons. Humanity will be able to reset itself, Thurman explains. Thurman reaches for the pistol that Keene holds. Keene shoots and kills Thurman. Chapter 103. It is year 34 in Silo 17. The rising water level in the silo forces Jimmy to continue to move up higher into the silo. Heading home for the day, Jimmy is stunned when he sees his door opened. Inside, an injured woman tackles him, holds a knife to his throat, tells him she doesn't want to hurt him, asks his name, and says she is happy to see him. Epilogue. In the communications room, a woman named Juliet calls Keene. She says she has found out much of the truth in a room full of books. She says she is going to get to the heart of what Keene and his people have done. Keene cautions her to be careful digging for the truth. Juliet says they'll be careful because she would hate for Keene to hear them coming.